My name is Nora Reynolds, 32 years old, and I am the Director of Financial Risk Management at LeverEdge Financial. When Marcus Reed joined as our new VP, I thought we would make a great team. Then I discovered he was secretly altering the terms of a $35 million bond with Harrington Construction. I never imagined a simple forwarded email would save our company from financial ruin and expose a web of corruption that went deeper than anyone suspected. Who knew revenge could be so satisfying? Drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you want to hear more corporate revenge stories where the underdog comes out on top. My journey to becoming Director of Financial Risk Management at LeverEdge Financial was not an easy one. After graduating with my MBA in Finance from Northwestern University with honors, I spent 2 years at a Big Four accounting firm before making the jump to the financial sector. My passion has always been risk analysis. I find genuine satisfaction in spotting potential issues before they become disasters. Call me cautious, but I believe in protecting assets and doing things the right way. LeverEdge Financial is not a Wall Street giant, but we are respected in our field. We manage about $2 billion in assets across various portfolios, with 150 employees spread across 3 offices. Our headquarters in Chicago houses most of our analysts and management team. We pride ourselves on steady growth and ethical practices, which is what attracted me to the company in the first place. After 6 years of dedicated work, climbing from junior analyst to senior risk manager, I finally earned my director position. The promotion came after I identified a critical flaw in a potential acquisition that would have cost us millions. Our CEO, Rebecca Johnson, personally thanked me for saving the company from what she called a beautiful disaster on paper. When Marcus Reed joined LeverEdge as our new Vice President of Finance, his resume was impressive. He had spent 8 years at Goldman Sachs and 3 years at a boutique investment firm known for aggressive growth strategies. Rebecca had personally recruited him, excited about bringing his innovative thinking to our more conservative company. I still remember our first meeting. Marcus was tall, impeccably dressed in custom suits, with a confident smile and firm handshake. He spoke with authority about market trends and growth opportunities. During our initial one-on-one meeting, he seemed genuinely interested in my risk assessment processes. "Your reputation precedes you, Nora," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Rebecca tells me you have saved this company millions with your risk models." I was flattered. "I just look at the numbers carefully," I replied. "Sometimes the best deals are the ones you walk away from." He laughed. "A conservative approach has its merits, but I hope we can push boundaries together, find that sweet spot between risk and reward." For the first 6 months, our working relationship was productive and respectful. Marcus was my direct supervisor, and we both reported to Henry Clark, our Chief Financial Officer. Henry was a veteran in the industry, cautious but fair, who had been with LeverEdge since its founding 12 years ago. My closest colleague was Rachel Thompson, our compliance director. We had started at the company around the same time and bonded over being young women in a male-dominated industry. Rachel had a law background, and between my risk models and her legal expertise, we made a formidable team when evaluating potential problems. My role at LeverEdge was clear. I assessed risk for all major investments, created models to predict market volatility, and flagged potential compliance issues before they occurred. Marcus seemed to value this function, frequently consulting me on new investment opportunities and including me in strategic planning meetings. Our first project together was restructuring our technology portfolio. I identified which investments were underperforming and created risk profiles for potential new acquisitions. Marcus used my analysis to make the final decisions, and the restructured portfolio showed a 12% increase in returns within the first quarter. The board was impressed, and Marcus made sure to credit my contribution during the presentation. "This is the kind of collaboration I want to see more of," Rebecca commented after the board meeting. "Your complementary skills are exactly what we need to grow while maintaining our standards." I felt valued and optimistic about our future working relationship. Marcus even invited me and a few other directors to his home for dinner, where I met his wife Diana, a pediatric surgeon. They lived in an elegant brownstone in Lincoln Park, filled with modern art and photographs from their travels. It seemed like Marcus had it all: a successful career, a beautiful home, and a brilliant spouse. To the future of LeverEdge, Marcus toasted that night, raising his glass of expensive Cabernet, and to the team that will take us there. I had no reason to doubt his sincerity. After years of hard work and sometimes feeling overlooked, I finally felt like my expertise was being recognized and utilized. Marcus was bringing fresh energy to our company, and I was excited to be part of his inner circle. If only I had known what was coming, I might have been less enthusiastic about our partnership. But hindsight, as they say, is 20/20, and the Marcus Reed who clinked glasses with me that night was not the same man I would come to know in the months ahead. The shift in Marcus's behavior was so gradual that I almost missed it. About 6 months after he joined Leveredge, I noticed he had stopped dropping by my office for our informal morning chats about market conditions. His emails became shorter, more directive than collaborative. At first, I attributed it to increased pressure from above. Rebecca had set ambitious growth targets for the year, and everyone was feeling the strain. The first red flag appeared when I discovered I had been excluded from a key strategy meeting about a new investment initiative. When I asked Marcus about it later, he shrugged it off. "It was just preliminary discussions, Nora. Nothing concrete yet. I would have looped you in once we had something worth analyzing." I accepted his explanation, but a week later, Rachel mentioned the meeting had included detailed presentations on risk tolerance adjustments. "I assumed you had signed off on them," she said, looking confused when I told her I knew nothing about it. The incidents began to multiply. I arrived at work one Monday to discover Marcus had taken over my team's analysis of the Westfield portfolio, our largest client relationship. No email, no heads up, just my analyst Tom, informing me that Marcus said he needed it urgently and would handle it personally. Then came the Asian market risk report. I had stayed until 11 at night for a week straight, coordinating with our Singapore office to complete a comprehensive analysis of emerging market risks in Southeast Asia. The morning of the executive presentation, I found Marcus presenting my findings as if they were his own work. My name appeared only in the acknowledgments section of the report, listed alongside junior analysts who had merely provided data points. "Great work on this," Marcus Rebecca said after the presentation. "This is exactly the kind of forward-thinking analysis we need." He nodded, accepting the praise without even glancing in my direction, happy to provide value to the team. Later that week, I accidentally overheard Marcus speaking to Bradford Walsh, our marketing director, outside the break room. "Between us, Nora is a bit too cautious for where we need to go," Marcus was saying. "Good analyst, but stuck in old paradigms. We need more aggressive thinkers in risk management if we want to capture the opportunities in this market." I froze, coffee cup in hand, unsure whether to make my presence known or retreat. Before I could decide, they moved down the hallway, their voices fading. My cheeks burned with humiliation and anger. Was this what he really thought of me? After all the successful projects we had completed together? Rachel noticed my increasingly tense relationship with Marcus and pulled me aside after a compliance meeting. "You should know there are rumors going around," she said quietly. "People are saying Marcus is looking to bring in someone from his old firm for your position. A guy named Jordan Harris." My stomach dropped. "Has he said something specific?" Rachel shook her head. "Not directly, but he has mentioned this Jordan person several times to Henry, talking about his innovative approach to risk and how he transforms liability into opportunity." That afternoon, I decided to confront Marcus directly. I knocked on his office door, determined to clear the air. "Do you have concerns about my performance?" I asked after closing the door behind me, "because I feel like I am being sidelined from projects that fall directly under my purview." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression neutral. "Not at all, Nora. You do excellent work within your framework. I am just trying to accelerate certain initiatives, and sometimes that means streamlining the process." "Streamlining by cutting out the risk assessment," I countered. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Not cutting it out, just approaching it differently. The market waits for no one, and sometimes your methods, while thorough, take longer than we can afford." "My methods have prevented this company from making several catastrophic investments," I reminded him. "And perhaps they have also caused us to miss opportunities," he replied smoothly. "Look, I value your input, but as VP, I need to make executive decisions about workflow and priorities. I hope you can respect that." The conversation left me unsettled. On the surface, his explanation made sense, but something felt off. That night, I began saving important emails and documents related to all our major projects. I took screenshots of conversations and backed up risk assessment reports to my personal drive. It was not that I expected to need them, but my instincts were telling me to create a paper trail. 2 weeks later, a man I did not recognize arrived at our office. Tall with a perpetual smirk and a bespoke suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, he walked straight to Marcus's office without checking in with reception. "Who was that?" I asked Lisa, our receptionist. "Jordan Harris," she replied. "He has been here 3 times this month. Always goes straight to Marcus's office and stays for hours." So this was the Jordan that Rachel had mentioned. I watched through the glass walls of Marcus's office as the 2 men laughed and looked at documents together, their body language suggesting familiarity beyond professional acquaintance. Later that week in the executive dining room, I overheard Marcus mentioning a big opportunity to Henry. He spoke in vague terms about guaranteed returns and minimal risk exposure, phrases that always set off alarms in my risk manager brain. When Henry asked if I had reviewed the opportunity, Marcus quickly changed the subject. The distance between Marcus and me continued to grow. He began scheduling team meetings when I had standing appointments with clients. Important decisions were made without my input. Emails regarding major investment strategies no longer included me in the thread until after the fact. I started keeping a detailed journal of these incidents, noting dates, times, and specific actions. I was not sure what I was preparing for, but the knot of anxiety in my stomach grew tighter each day. Something was happening at Leveredge, something that deliberately excluded the director of risk management, and that could only mean trouble ahead. The breakthrough came on a Friday evening when most of the office had emptied for the weekend. I had stayed late to finish quarterly risk assessments, and on my way out I noticed the light still on in Marcus's office. His door was ajar, but he was nowhere to be seen, probably stepped out for a coffee or bathroom break. As I walked past, a document on his desk caught my eye. The header read, "Harrington Construction Bond Issuance, $35 million. What made me stop was the bright yellow sticky note attached to it with Marcus's distinctive handwriting. "Terms finalized. J promises 8.5% minimum return. Push through before Q3 review." I knew I should keep walking. This was not my business if Marcus had not included me. But as director of risk management, all major investments were supposed to cross my desk. A $35 million bond issuance was definitely major, and I had heard nothing about it. I glanced down the hallway. Empty. I stepped into Marcus's office and quickly scanned the document. It was a term sheet for a private bond issuance to Harrington Construction, a company I vaguely recognized as a commercial developer in the Midwest. The terms were aggressive, far more favorable to Harrington than standard for our industry. My risk manager alarms were blaring. I heard footsteps and quickly stepped away from the desk, pretending to leave a note in Marcus's inbox. He appeared in the doorway, surprise registering on his face. "Nora working late." "Just finishing up some reports," I said casually. "I saw your light on and thought I would drop off these compliance updates for Monday." I placed a folder I had been carrying into his inbox. He nodded, but his eyes darted to the desk, where the Harrington document lay exposed. "Anything else you needed?" "No, that is it. Have a good weekend." I walked out heart-pounding and waited until I reached my car before letting out a shaky breath. A $35 million deal that I knew nothing about was highly irregular. And who was this J that promised such high returns? Jordan Harris, I assumed. That weekend I did my homework. I researched Harrington Construction thoroughly, pulling public records, news articles, and financial statements. What I found was troubling. While they projected an image of success, their financials told a different story. They had 3 stalled projects in Detroit, a lawsuit from subcontractors in Cleveland, and their debt-to-equity ratio was dangerously high. Their CEO, Kevin Harrington, had previously been involved with 2 companies that filed for bankruptcy shortly after he departed. Most concerning was their cash flow statement, which showed several large unexplained transfers to offshore accounts. To an untrained eye, these might look like standard international business operations, but I recognized the pattern from a fraudulent investment case study from my MBA program. By Sunday night, I had compiled a 47-page risk analysis report. My conclusion: Harrington Construction had a 68% likelihood of defaulting within 18 months. This was not a company we should be lending $35 million to, especially not with favorable terms. This was exactly the kind of disaster I was employed to prevent. Monday morning, I requested a meeting with Marcus. To my surprise, he agreed to see me immediately. "I came across the Harrington Construction bond proposal," I said, directly placing my report on his desk. His expression hardened. "You came across it?" "Yes, and I took the liberty of conducting a risk assessment given the size of the investment." "That was unnecessary. I have already evaluated the opportunity. With all due respect, Marcus, risk assessment for investments of this size falls under my department's responsibilities, and what I found is concerning. I opened my report to the executive summary. Harrington shows multiple warning signs of financial instability. Their debt service coverage ratio is below 1. They have pending litigation from unpaid contractors, and their cash flow statements indicate possible accounting irregularities. Marcus barely glanced at the report. Your analysis is overly conservative as usual. You do not understand the construction market. Temporary cash flow issues are normal in development companies between project phases. These are not temporary issues, I insisted, flipping to the detailed financial analysis. Look at these transfers to Cayman Islands accounts, and this pattern of delayed vendor payments. Classic signs of a company robbing Peter to pay Paul. Marcus's face flushed with anger. This is precisely why I did not bring you into this deal, Nora. Your risk aversion is holding this company back. Harrington is on the verge of securing 3 major government contracts that will transform their balance sheet. Where is the documentation for these contracts? I found no mention of them in any public records or press releases. Not everything is public knowledge. I have personal assurances from Kevin Harrington. I pressed further. And what about this special commission clause on page 38 of the term sheet? I pulled out a copy I had made. 1.2% to a third-party consultant for facilitating the deal. That is $420,000. Who is this consultant? Marcus stood up abruptly. That is none of your concern. This deal has already been approved in principle by Henry. Your input is neither required nor welcome at this stage. I left his office shaken, but more determined than ever. I went straight to Henry Clark's office and requested an urgent meeting. Henry had always been fair and reasonable, a steady hand guiding our financial decisions. I am concerned about this Harrington bond issuance, I explained, showing him my findings. The risk profile is far outside our normal parameters. Henry reviewed my report with a furrowed brow. This is concerning, he admitted, but Marcus has assured me that he has insider information about Harrington's upcoming government contracts. He has worked with Kevin before and vouches for him personally. And the special commission clause? I asked. Henry looked uncomfortable. Marcus explained that as a standard finder's fee for the broker who brought us the opportunity. $420,000 is hardly standard, I pointed out. And why is the recipient not named in the document? Look, Nora, I appreciate your thoroughness. It is why you are valuable to this company. But Marcus has more experience with these high-level deals than either of us. Rebecca has given him latitude to pursue aggressive growth opportunities. So you are approving this bond despite the red flags? Henry sighed. I am not dismissing your concerns. Keep monitoring the situation, but do not impede the process. If you find concrete evidence of impropriety, bring it to me immediately. That evening I was working late again when I saw Marcus and Jordan Harris leaving the building together. On impulse, I followed them at a distance. They went to Morton's Steakhouse 2 blocks away. Through the window, I could see them celebrating clinking glasses of whiskey. The familiarity between them was striking, certainly more than a professional relationship. I took a photo with my phone, not sure why, but feeling it might be important later. The next day I did some digging on Jordan Harris. It turned out he had worked with Marcus at his previous firm. In fact, they had collaborated on several deals, similar to the Harrington bond private financings with unusual terms. I could not access the details, but the pattern was becoming clear. Marcus and Jordan had a history, and now they were bringing their operation to lever edge. The following weeks brought a systematic campaign to undermine my position. First, Marcus reassigned 2 of my best analysts to other departments, claiming resource optimization. This left me shorthanded for ongoing risk assessments, forcing me to work even longer hours to maintain oversight of our portfolio. Then came the access restrictions. I discovered my security clearance for certain trading systems had been downgraded, limiting my visibility into transaction details. When I inquired with IT, they showed me the authorization email from Marcus, citing streamlined access protocols based on operational needs. Around the office, I began noticing whispers that stopped when I approached. Rachel reported hearing comments about my outdated management style and negative attitude toward innovation. Someone had started a narrative painting me as the obstacle to Leveredge's growth. The most blatant attack came during my quarterly performance review. Despite exceeding all my KPIs and preventing at least 3 potentially disastrous investments, Marcus gave me a below expectations rating. Your risk assessments have become increasingly disconnected from market realities, he wrote in the evaluation. Reluctance to embrace calculated risk has impeded departmental goals. When I challenged the assessment with specific examples of my contributions, Marcus smiled thinly. Perception is reality in leadership positions, Nora, and the perception is that you are not aligned with our new direction. That night, working late again, I made a discovery that confirmed my worst suspicions. Marcus had forgotten to log out of his email on a conference room computer after a late meeting. Normally, I would never violate someone's privacy, but given the circumstances, I felt justified in taking a quick look. There it was, in black and white, an email thread between Marcus and Jordan, discussing restructuring the risk management department and replacing entrenched personnel. My name appeared several times, always in the context of being an obstacle to their plans. Most disturbing was Marcus's comment, "Once N is out, we can accelerate the H deal and several others in the pipeline." I took screenshots, my hands shaking with a mixture of fear and vindication. This was not paranoia. They really were trying to push me out to clear the way for their schemes. The stress began taking a serious toll. I was sleeping barely 4 hours a night, constantly on edge, checking and rechecking my work for any mistake that could be used against me. My friends commented on my weight loss and the dark circles under my eyes. Even my usually supportive parents noticed the change during our weekly phone calls. "You do not sound like yourself, honey," my mother said. "Is everything okay at work?" I could not bring myself to explain the full situation. "Just a challenging project," I told her. "It will get better soon." Rachel became my lifeline at the office. We began meeting for coffee outside the building, away from prying eyes and ears. "You need to build a case," she advised during one such meeting. "Document everything. Save emails, record meetings if legal in your state, take screenshots. If they are planning to terminate you, you will need evidence of their true motives." I followed her advice, becoming methodical about preserving evidence. I recorded meetings on my phone, maintained a detailed journal of incidents, and backed up all relevant documents to secure storage. I even installed an app that automatically saved all my work emails to a private account. Through careful investigation, I discovered another disturbing connection. Marcus and Jordan had worked together at not just one, but 2 previous companies. At the second firm, they had orchestrated a similar bond deal with a construction company that defaulted within a year, but not before paying out substantial fees to consultants. The firm had written off the loss, and no investigation had followed. The most damning evidence came when I managed to access the complete Harrington financial records, which Marcus had hidden in a restricted network folder. The actual numbers were even worse than my estimates. Harrington was technically insolvent, kept afloat only by creative accounting, and continued cash infusions from new investors. The promised government contracts either did not exist or were in very preliminary stages with no guarantees. The psychological warfare continued to escalate. Marcus began excluding me from meetings that were mandatory for my position. Project updates were sent to everyone on the team except me. Decisions were made and announced without my input, even when they directly impacted risk management protocols. "You are being paranoid," Marcus told me, when I confronted him about being left off email chains. "It must have been a system glitch. IT has been having issues with the distribution lists." But Rachel confirmed what I already knew. "He is gaslighting you, Nora. I have seen the original emails. Your address was deliberately removed before sending." The situation was becoming untenable. I considered resigning, but that would mean abandoning the company to Marcus's schemes. And practically speaking, I needed this job. My mortgage, my student loans, my mother's medical bills all depended on my salary. So I continued gathering evidence, building my case, and looking for the right moment to act. That moment would come sooner than I expected, and in a way I could never have anticipated. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in late October. Marcus called me into his office, first thing, his manner unusually cordial. "Nora, we need to expedite the Harrington bond issuance," he announced. "I need you to sign off on the final risk assessment today." I stared at him in disbelief. Today? The scheduled completion date is 2 weeks from now. We have not even finished the due diligence process. "The market window is closing," he insisted. "If we wait 2 more weeks, we might have to offer less favorable terms." The executive committee has already conditionally approved the transaction pending your sign-off. This was a clever trap. If I refused, I would be the bottleneck delaying an approved transaction. If I signed without proper review, I would be professionally liable for any issues that arose. I cannot in good conscience sign off without completing the standard risk assessment procedures, I said firmly. Our protocols exist for a reason. Marcus's friendly demeanor vanished. This is not a request, Nora. This is a directive from your superior. The assessment needs to be completed today. I understand the urgency, but I need at least a week to properly evaluate the updated terms. The last version I saw had several problematic clauses that needed revision. The terms have been finalized, he said dismissively. Any issues you flagged have been addressed. Then I need to review the changes, I insisted. Marcus's jaw tightened. Your excessive caution is becoming insubordination. I need that sign-off by end of day. I left his office and immediately pulled up the latest version of the bond agreement from our document management system. What I found shocked me. Far from addressing the issues I had raised, the new terms were even more favorable to Harrington. Critical protection clauses had been removed, and a new provision had been added, allowing for early withdrawal of funds with minimal notice. I emailed Marcus immediately. The revised terms have increased, not decreased, the risk exposure. Several standard protection clauses have been removed entirely. I cannot approve these terms without substantial revision and further due diligence. His response came minutes later, all pretense gone. Your approval is a formality. The deal is proceeding. That's a non-entity now. Clear the access. The aggressive tone and odd phrasing startled me. Clear the access seemed like a command to someone else mistakenly included in his response to me. Was he instructing IT to remove my access to the transaction documents? I forwarded the exchange to my personal email, then checked the system. Sure enough, I could no longer access the Harrington files. Marcus had preemptively locked me out. I marched to his office, but his assistant April informed me he was in a closed-door meeting with Henry and could not be disturbed. Through the glass wall, I could see them in intense discussion, with Marcus doing most of the talking while Henry nodded reluctantly. Back at my desk, I received an email from our finance department. They were requesting confirmation of wire transfer instructions for the Harrington bond payment, scheduled for the following morning. The email was addressed to Marcus, with me merely copied as in for your information. Marcus had completely circumvented my authority and was proceeding with the transaction without proper risk assessment. I tried calling Henry directly, but he did not pick up. I left an urgent voicemail explaining my concerns. Then I emailed Rebecca, our CEO, requesting an emergency meeting, but her assistant replied that she was traveling in Europe for the rest of the week. By late afternoon, Marcus had gathered several department heads in the conference room. Through the glass, I could see him giving what appeared to be a presentation about the Harrington deal. I had not been invited. When he returned to his office, I confronted him directly. You have bypassed risk management protocols completely, I said, standing in his doorway. This transaction has not been properly vetted. Marcus looked at me with cold contempt. You have become a barrier to progress, Nora. Your risk aversion is costing this company opportunities. The Harrington deal is proceeding with or without your stamp of approval. This is not about risk aversion, I countered. This is about basic due diligence. The terms of this deal are irresponsible, and Harrington's financials show clear signs of insolvency. Your assessment is wrong, he snapped. I have personally reviewed their books. Then why hide them from me? Why restrict my access? If everything is above board, there should be nothing to conceal. His expression darkened. I do not have to justify my decisions to you. Know your place, or you will find yourself looking for a new job. The threat was explicit now. I returned to my office, heart racing, weighing my options. I could escalate to the board, but without Rebecca's support, that was risky. I could resign in protest, but that would not stop the transaction. Or I could take one last desperate step. I opened my email and forwarded Marcus's clear the assess message, along with the entire email chain, and my risk assessment report to Sarah Miller, our corporate counsel. I included a brief note. Sarah, I believe this transaction violates our fiduciary duty and internal controls. Please review urgently, as the wire transfer is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Then I waited, alternating between certainty that I had done the right thing and terror that I had just ended my career at LeverEdge. 45 minutes later, the office erupted in activity. Sarah Miller was speed-walking down the hallway toward the executive offices, clutching a stack of papers. Shortly after I saw Henry Clark literally running toward Marcus's office, his face ashen. He burst in without knocking, holding his phone out like it was radioactive. Through the glass, I watched as Henry showed Marcus something on the screen. Marcus's face went from confusion to shock to anger in seconds. Henry was saying something urgently, his hand visibly shaking. Though I could not hear the words, I could read Henry's lips clearly as he asked, "Did you authorize a $35 million bond pull?" Marcus jumped to his feet, gesturing wildly, his face contorted in rage. Henry shook his head repeatedly, pointing at the phone. Then Rebecca's voice came through on speakerphone, loud enough that several people in nearby offices turned to look. The dominoes had started to fall, and they were falling faster than I could have imagined. Within an hour, security was escorting Marcus from the building. His face was a mask of fury as he passed my office, his eyes locking with mine for a brief, chilling moment. I half expected him to burst in and confront me, but the security guards kept him moving toward the exit. Rebecca had apparently cut her European trip short and was flying back immediately. In the meantime, Henry called an emergency meeting of all department directors. Rachel squeezed my arm supportively as we filed into the conference room. Effective, immediately. Marcus Reed is suspended pending an internal investigation. Henry announced, his voice strained. Sarah Miller will be leading the investigation with the assistance of external counsel. All communication regarding the Harrington construction bond issuance should be directed to Sarah or myself. After the meeting, Henry asked me to stay behind. When everyone else had left, he collapsed into a chair, looking suddenly much older than his 56 years. "You were right," he said simply. "About all of it. If Sarah had not caught that email when she did," he trailed off, shaking his head. "What exactly happened?" I asked. Henry explained that after receiving my email, Sarah had immediately reviewed the bond documents and discovered multiple irregularities. The most alarming was a clause buried in subsection 42 that granted Harrington the right to withdraw the entire bond amount with only 24 hours' notice, without the normal penalties or collateral requirements. They were planning to take the money and run, Henry said. Jordan Harris had already submitted the withdrawal notice this morning, timed to execute immediately after the funds were transferred. By this time tomorrow, $35 million would have been gone with virtually no recourse for recovery. My suspicions had been correct, but the reality was even worse than I had imagined. This was not just a risky investment, it was outright fraud. The next 72 hours were a blur of activity. Rebecca returned and established a crisis management team with me as the lead. External auditors were brought in to review all transactions Marcus had overseen. The preliminary findings were stunning. Marcus had not just compromised the Harrington deal, he had manipulated risk assessments on at least 3 other investments, hiding critical information and altering terms after approval. In each case, there were unusual fee structures benefiting unnamed consultants. The most damning evidence came from Marcus's private email, which our IT security team recovered. Communications between Marcus and Jordan revealed they had been planning this scheme since before Marcus joined LeverEdge. Jordan had created a shell company in the Cayman Islands that was set to receive consulting fees totaling $850,000 from the Harrington deal alone. Most shocking of all, Marcus had a hidden equity stake in Harrington Construction through another shell company. He stood to profit not just from the fees, but from the fraudulent use of the bond money itself. While the investigation proceeded, I focused on damage control. The Harrington bond had not been funded, but we needed to ensure the terms were legally invalidated. I spent 3 days and nights reviewing every line of the agreement, searching for a legal pathway to void the contract. Finally, buried in the standard boilerplate that few people ever read, I found a document integrity clause, stating that any unauthorized alterations to the agreement rendered it null and void. We had proof that Marcus had changed key terms after the initial approval without proper authorization. This was our way out. With Sarah and our external counsel, I developed a strategy to confront Harrington and Jordan. Rebecca approved the plan, and we moved quickly before they could conceal more evidence. We arrived unannounced at Harrington's headquarters in Detroit, a surprisingly modest office for a company seeking $35 million in financing. Kevin Harrington's face fell when he saw our team enter his reception area. "We need to discuss the bond agreement," Sarah stated firmly, "and the fraudulent terms that were inserted after initial approval." In the conference room, I laid out our findings, the altered terms, the shell companies, the planned immediate withdrawal, and the undisclosed relationships between Kevin Jordan and Marcus. This constitutes fraud, wire fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty, Sarah explained calmly. We are prepared to pursue both criminal and civil action against all involved parties. Kevin Harrington, once bluster and confident, seemed to deflate before our eyes. Jordan assured me this was standard practice, he claimed weakly. I did not understand all the legal implications. And the shell company in your wife's maiden name that was set to receive $2 million of the bond money, I asked. Was that also a misunderstanding? The negotiations lasted 14 hours. By the end, we had a new agreement. Harrington would provide additional collateral for the legitimate portion of their business operations. Jordan would return all advance fees he had already collected, and both would provide complete documentation of their arrangement with Marcus. In exchange, we would not press immediate criminal charges, though we would cooperate with any subsequent law enforcement investigation. Back at Leveredge, Marcus's downfall was swift and complete. The board terminated him for cause after a brief but thorough investigation. The evidence was overwhelming: emails, altered documents, secret bank accounts, all painting a picture of calculated fraud. Jordan Harris was banned from all future business with Leveredge and reported to regulatory authorities. His reputation in the financial industry was effectively destroyed. Kevin Harrington managed to avoid criminal charges by cooperating fully, but Harrington Construction was placed under regulatory supervision and required to restructure its management completely. A week after the crisis was resolved, Rebecca called an all-company meeting. Standing at the front of our largest conference room, she addressed the somber gathering. We came dangerously close to a catastrophic failure of our systems and values, she began. That we avoided this outcome is due primarily to one person's integrity and courage. To my surprise and embarrassment, she asked me to join her at the podium. Nora Reynolds exemplifies the values this company was founded upon, Rebecca continued. When faced with pressure, threats, and isolation, she maintained her commitment to doing what was right. She is the reason Leveredge is still standing today. The applause that followed was overwhelming. Colleagues who had distanced themselves during Marcus's campaign against me now approached with congratulations and apologies. Henry publicly acknowledged that he should have listened to my concerns sooner. The following week, Rebecca called me into her office. We need to rebuild our risk management and compliance functions stronger than before, she said. And I want you to lead that effort with expanded authority and resources. She slid a document across her desk. It was an offer letter for a new position, Executive Vice President of Risk Management and Compliance, reporting directly to her, with a seat on the executive committee. We need to make sure nothing like this ever happens again, she said, and I can think of no one better qualified to design those safeguards than the person who caught it the first time. I accepted the promotion with a mixture of pride and humility. The experience had taught me painful but valuable lessons about corporate politics, the importance of documentation, and the courage to stand alone when necessary. These were lessons I would carry forward into my new role, determined to create systems that would protect Leveredge from both external threats and internal bad actors. 1 year after the Harrington incident, Leveredge had not just recovered, but emerged stronger. The $35 million bond that nearly destroyed us had been restructured into a legitimate investment with proper terms and collateral, now yielding a steady 7% return. Our risk management protocols had been completely overhauled with multiple layers of verification and transparency that made similar fraud virtually impossible. The journey of healing had not been easy for me personally. For months after Marcus's departure, I struggled with residual anxiety and paranoia. Every email, every meeting request, every casual conversation in the hallway triggered a moment of panic. Would this be another attack? Another attempt to undermine me? Rachel noticed my lingering stress and convinced me to see a therapist. You have been through a workplace trauma, she insisted. That takes time to process. She was right. The weekly sessions helped me understand the toll the experience had taken and gave me tools to rebuild my sense of security. Gradually, the nightmares about Marcus faded. I stopped checking my email obsessively during evenings and weekends. I relearned how to trust colleagues and collaborate without constant suspicion. Building my new team became a form of healing. I carefully selected people not just for their technical skills, but for their integrity and communication style. We established a culture where questioning was encouraged, where raising concerns was seen as valuable rather than obstructive. My team knew that I would back them up if they spotted potential problems, even if it meant challenging powerful figures in the company. My relationship with Rebecca and Henry evolved into one of deep mutual respect. They valued my perspective and often sought my input on strategic decisions beyond risk management. Rebecca once told me, "Your willingness to risk your job to protect this company is something I will never forget or take for granted." Marcus's story did not end with his termination from Leveredge. The regulatory authorities investigated him based on the evidence we provided, and he eventually faced criminal charges for fraud, embezzlement, and wire fraud. After a high-profile trial that sent shockwaves through the financial industry, he was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. His reputation was destroyed. His career in finance permanently ended. I took no pleasure in his downfall. Despite everything he had done, I found it sad that someone with his intelligence and charisma had chosen to use those gifts for deception rather than creation. What could he have accomplished if he had channeled that energy into legitimate innovation? Jordan Harris avoided prison by testifying against Marcus, but he was barred from the securities industry and fined heavily. Kevin Harrington managed to save his company through bankruptcy reorganization, emerging with new management and strict oversight. He sent me a surprising email months later, thanking me for stopping a scheme that would have eventually destroyed everything he had built. Rachel and I became even closer through the ordeal. Our weekly coffee meetings continued, but now they were about future plans and creative ideas rather than defense strategies. She was promoted to general counsel after Sarah Miller departed for a position at another firm, and together we formed a powerful partnership advocating for ethical practices throughout the company. Perhaps the most meaningful outcome was the training program I developed for new employees. Ethics and finance lessons from the front lines became a required course for everyone from junior analysts to senior executives. I shared my experience in anonymized form, helping others recognize the warning signs of fraud and the importance of speaking up even when it is difficult. Financial numbers are never just numbers, I would tell each class. They represent trust. They represent people's savings, retirements, college funds, dreams. When we protect the integrity of those numbers, we are protecting real lives. The lessons I learned through that harrowing experience shaped me in ways I never expected. I discovered strengths I did not know I possessed: resilience in the face of isolation, courage to stand alone when necessary, and the persistence to document meticulously when no one else was watching. I learned that true success is not measured in dollars or titles, but in how we conduct ourselves when tested. Marcus had all the external trappings of success, but in pursuing money and power at any cost, he lost everything that truly matters: integrity, freedom, reputation, and the opportunity to create lasting value. Most importantly, I learned that one person can make a difference. In the face of systemic pressure, it would have been easier to look away, to sign the papers to go along with Marcus's plan. That choice might have preserved my job in the short term, but at the cost of my self-respect and potentially devastating consequences for our company and clients. The $35 million bond that almost destroyed Leveredge became a symbol of our transformation. Each quarter, when we review its performance, I am reminded that doing the right thing, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard, is always worth it in the end. If you are facing a similar challenge in your workplace, remember that you are stronger than you think. Document everything, find allies where you can, and trust your instincts when something feels wrong. The path of integrity may be lonely at times, but it leads to a place where you can look in the mirror and be proud of who you see. Have you ever had to stand up against workplace corruption or unethical behavior? What gave you the courage to speak up? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more corporate insights and stories of integrity prevailing against the odds. And remember to share this video with someone who might need encouragement to do the right thing in a difficult situation. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to stand firm in your values, whatever challenges you may face.